Thank you very much for staying with us. You're still watching Kakaaki, the African Voice, this Tuesday morning. And moving on from the newspaper review to continue our conversation concerning the state of insecurity in Nigeria. Of course, Adora did tell you earlier on that the Senate will be having a session with all the service chiefs this week in a bid to look at, to do a review of the security situation. Of course, you know that in Ekiti State, children were kidnapped and released, traditional rulers were killed. And we will be following all of that now with a look at the current efforts to tackle the criminality in Nigeria. We have joining us this morning Sir CHIKWE UDENSI, who is Interpol's systems consultant at the Nigerian, the NCB here in Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us. And let's begin to look at it from a wider perspective. I want us to start this conversation from the perspective of the Nigerian government having access to a list of sponsors of terror for several months now, and Nigerians don't know who these people are, in spite of the fact that the UAE that supplied the information has prosecuted a number of people, and they have been punished, including Nigerians. So I think we should start from there.
Well, I wouldn't be necessarily interested in the number or who are involved in terrorism. The important thing is, what's the solution to it? What's the solution to it? We have a very dire situation in the country, if you ask me. Very serious situation. When my very good friend Nuhu Ribadu was made the National Security Advisor, I was quite impressed. In fact, if you recall, I think it was on Focus here in AIT. I did emphasize that he will bring succor. He will bring some relief to the situation. When one can say very clearly that it is still very early, this regime cannot be totally blamed for what is happening right now, but we're not seeing much. We're not seeing much in terms of reaction of government or any proactivity of government to ensure that this does not continue. If we go to the gossip of who is involved and who is not involved, that's not important. The important thing is, what are the solutions? How do we curb it?
Surely if you know the source, you know how to solve it.
Well, the fact remains that we have 5 or 6 reports on that. And none of them has been effectively collaborated. It has not been authenticated by anybody. In fact, government at the time said it was hearsay. So we're not going to rely on hearsay. We're talking about concrete solutions to our problems. How do we solve them? What are the solutions to it? If you recall, our very good friend and brother, Kabiru Adamu, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, almost every day is on television. He gives clinical diagnosis of the problem. And every Nigerian you speak to will tell you what the problem is. The question is, don't we have the resources, the finances, the manpower to curtail this? Now you have identified the problem, which is the first step in solving a problem. The question is, why can't the problem be solved? If you, for example, you have malaria, and across the street there is a chemist or maybe a pharmacy that has the medication for malaria, and right inside your pocket, not even going to find to your own account, right in your pocket, there are enough resources for you to buy that malaria, and you still have not treated malaria. You need to see a psychiatrist. That is the issue. We have enough resources in this country, both financial, material, manpower, we have it. And we have sizably identified what the problem is, both by fly-by-night security consultants and by specialists. We have identified what the problem is. The question is, why is this still happening? Let me give you a very disturbing scenario here. I went to Europe 2 weeks ago, and I had to stop over in Ghana for 2 days. I went from Lagos. From Ghana to Lagos, that was my first time of going from Ghana to Lagos. It was 45 minutes flight. From Abuja to Lagos, we made it for 50 minutes. So here in Lagos, there's insecurity, massive insecurity. 45 minutes across the border, there's calm, resonance, quietness, good business is thriving. If you want to look at where you are and where you ought to be going to, let us not necessarily go international. That's the mistake most of us keep making. We give examples of America and Europe. No, look at our neighbors. Look at the Republic of Benin. We saw the scenario from immigration the other day. On the side of Nigeria, it's massive insecurity. Thus, across a stone throw, across the Republic of Benin, there's calm, good businesses, security. What are they doing that we're not doing? That is what the issue is. And that's the disturbing one too.
All right, quite clearly stated, there are certain conversations that are in between the lines, and the question is, what are they doing that we're not doing? And one would ask, Nigerians have been asking the same question, what is the government doing about insecurity? I remember sometime last year, a train bound to Kaduna, was stopped in its track by the bandits bombing the train tracks and carting away several, numbers of persons, killing some in their wake. They also attacked the Kaduna airport and killed, a worker in one of the runways and all of that. And now that was the first time I vividly experienced what I would have said was clear, daylight terrorism, close call, to the FCT. And now we have bandits, operating, kidnapping people within the FCT. So what happened in the Kogi Axis way? Now, when they cater people away, when they take people away, they go into the bushes, they go into ungoverned spaces. What is being done about these ungoverned spaces? Because it is quite clear that there is a space where these people feel safe enough and where perhaps the security agencies have not emboldened themselves to, advance.
Adora, let me be very clear to this matter. I'm not particularly concerned about attacking Abuja, or maybe close to Abuja. Anywhere there's an attack in Nigeria, we should show concern, enormous concern. But if you push the Abuja-Kaduna train issue a little further, look at what happened. We had information, clear information, that there were medical doctors sent to go and treat those who were being hurt in that process. So what we are saying, Adora, is that we knew where they were. The reason of government then was that they don't want casualty. They want to negotiate. You don't negotiate with terrorists. You see, the problem we have is that we don't have enough deterrent. There's still enough deterrent to stop this. These things are stoppable. Like I gave you the earlier example of having malaria and not having the resources and having the availability of the product and not treating yourself. You need to see something is wrong with your head. Earlier on this program I heard you talk about also the kidnappings in Kogi. The records are very clear. About 95 to 98% of those kidnappings are happening in the bushes. We don't have drones to identify where they are. And let me tell you the very disturbing scenario now we have. Some ransoms are being paid into accounts, bank accounts. 2 weeks ago, one of our friends, a former senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, his telephone was hacked, and they were giving accounts, bank accounts of where to pay monies into. Bank accounts in commercial banks in Nigeria. That is where some of the monies made for ransom. That is where they're going to. We are getting to the brink. And we hope this government will, as much as one is not blaming them much because they are just fresh, they're just new, they inherited quite a whole lot. But we're saying that something has to be done.
Well, leadership is about preparation. And people would say before you take on the baton of power, you must have been able to analyze the situation, background it, get your team ready, and be ready to take charge. And the promises from, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration was that they would see to it that, hardship is reduced and insecurity will be the forefront of their conversation. Until now, several months into power, I mean, would you excuse it from being a carryover from the past administration or lack of preparation?
It is not lack of preparation. I don't believe that. If you want to renovate, you have to do a little bit of tearing down in renovation. Like they say, you can't make omelette without breaking eggs or breaking an egg. I am in front role of this security arrangement in the country. I run the Interpol systems in Nigeria. So I relate very closely with security apparatus in the country. If you ask me, the real position is that we don't have the tools. That is the real truth. There are not enough tools to run it. We have what we call a counter-terrorism squad in the Nigerian police force, for example. Their job is to counter terrorism. But we need to ask, what do they use in countering terrorism? Are you going to use bare hands? The world has left us behind in terms of availability of the tools that are necessarily required for security. And let me say very clearly again, I've said this over and over, it is not that we don't have the resources to provide these tools. It is not even that we don't have the manpower, because when our men go outside the country, they are the best in the area of security.
Okay,
but the question is,
since you've put it this way, you've gone down memory lane talking about the excellence of Nigeria's security operatives when they go outside the country, especially for international assignments with the UN and things like that. You've talked about the fact that Nigeria has the resources. You've talked about the fact that the intel is available. So what is the problem? Why aren't we stopping this? Why are we allowing blood to keep flowing on a daily basis? Why are we allowing people to hemorrhage funds that are hard to come by with the economic hardship that Nigerians are going through right now without putting an end to the kind of insecurity that we are experiencing? It's difficult to do business now, really.
You can look at it from different angles. If we are suggesting that the lead agency for internal security in the country is the Nigerian police force. So if we take that as an example, you agree with me that about 85% of the job of policing is being done by the category of people called the NCOs, the non-commissioned officers.
Yes.
And about 70% of our people live in the rural areas. So the category we're talking about is from constable to sergeant, and maybe sometimes to inspector. That's what we're looking at. Have you found out how much they earn every month? And how regular does this money come to them? If you must get serious with the business of security, you must ensure that those whose job it is to ensure that security have basic welfare. This category of people I'm telling you, none of them earns 100,000 naira a month. And that includes boarding. You know what I mean by boarding? Accommodation. That's what they call it, boarding. Can anybody today by any stretch of imagination. Can anybody live on 100,000 naira? Haven't put in the number, this number of years, and maybe have families, have dependents, aged parents in some cases. Can you live on 100,000? And if you just oppose that with the massive leakages and wastages we have in the system, have you seen some of our heads of MDAs, the ministries, departments, and agencies? Have you seen how they move? You see their convoys? Have you seen the retinue of vehicles on their entourage? Have you seen their lifestyles? Not too long ago, we talked about the problem associated with the pressure on the naira. Some economic experts were telling us some economic indices and economic receivables. We said that's not the issue. The very simple fact is that the number of demand by the presidency, the governors, the ministers, heads of the MDAs, heads of the parastatals and agencies, the demand on the for dollar, for travels, takes a chunk of the whole game. We're talking about over 70%. We're not talking about school fees and maybe importation of raw materials or maybe finished goods. No. We're talking about wastages, seminars, conferences, shows abroad. That is where the pressure is on the naira.
So what you're saying now is that government must start by cleaning its own stable first, by cutting truly, not by word of mouth, truly cutting down on the cost of governance.
Absolutely.
Especially foreign trips.
When I was informed that the president had taken a proactive measure by reducing his own entourage to 25 persons going abroad, the question was, what was the number before then? Almost 200. Almost 200. Even at that 25, we're asking, don't we have embassies where they're going to? What are the roles and duties of those ambassadors, consular officers, retinue of employees there? We have enormous wastages. And we need some, so many people have talked about what they call some shock therapy. We need it in the system. Somebody has to come up with something different, away from what we have right now. There must be some shock therapy. If there was no shock therapy, Lee Kuan Yew couldn't have done what he did in Singapore. If there was no shock therapy, Edgar Hoover wouldn't have sanitized the jobs of the cabinos in New York and New Jersey areas in America. We need a change. We need a Daniel that has to come to judgment. If that is not done, we shall keep paying lip service to it all.
All right, let's look at the issue of, of course, you followed the killings that happened in 25 communities in Plateau State just, on Christmas Eve, and the kidnapping, the spike in the criminality and the banditry has seen a lot of rise and call for state police. There is this understanding that, there is very few security presence in several of the states where this thing happened, or that the attacks happen and there is no response to intelligence. Now, the call for state police, do you think that that could also be a conversation that could be advanced? I know that a governor like El-Rufai back then in Kaduna kept calling for it. Several other governors at Lagos State Assembly has also been calling for it. Do you think that's the way forward at the moment?
No, it's not. When they are governors, they'll call for state police. When they're out there, they wouldn't call for state police. The question we're asking, are we suggesting that you want to grant the control of arms and ammunition into the hands of this current category of governors? Take very thin skin. They don't take any form of opposition. Any dissenting voice is handled with some level of ignominy. I have never been a supporter of state police, but I've been an advocate, a massive advocate for community policing. I don't know if you understand what I mean by community. We have given them all kinds of blueprints on community policing. They are giving it to government. In fact, the previous government, like I keep saying, they weren't a listening government. They were not listening. They were doing nothing. And they took us back over 50 years for this country to recover from. So I do not agree or support state police to the extent to which it will be in the hands of the governors. No, I'm opposed to it. I support community policing. I support the encouragement of regional police force, like something like a Motoku. It's a wonderful arrangement. They're doing a great job. I support the Bubago. In fact, I gave them a blueprint free of charge. A blueprint that would have costed them millions of dollars. It was given to the southeastern governors free of charge, so that we can have a Bubago. I believe in vigilantes. Let the people police themselves. Community policing. The people know where the Appian routes are. They know who the criminals are. They know how to protect themselves. In fact, there is an inborn drive to protect yourself more than when somebody else is protecting you.
The instinct for self-preservation.
Absolutely. So let us look for community policing project. Let us look for vigilante projects. Let us look for regional security networks. Government has given the leeway for this. And that's where the solutions are. Let these governors not tell us that they need to control arms and ammunition, command and control of them all. It will be disaster.
But without even the state police, we already see proliferation of arms, you know, across. I mean, we see the sophistication of the arms and ammunition that the bandits wield, and sometimes the question is, how do they get access to all of this?
Yeah, we know how they got access to it. Most of them came from, if you look at what we call the firearm index, index, I mean, if you are investigating a firearm, you look, there's a serial number. Serial numbering on the firearm will tell you the manufacturer, it will tell you the initial sellers, the dealers of the firearm, and the country that purchased the firearm. That's the index, will tell you that. About 85%, from the records we have, about 85% of the arms and ammunition, light arms and ammunition that came into this country came from Libya. When Libya fell, the armory of Libya was looted. That was what created the problem. And look at the proximity of Libya to Nigeria. And then the demand for such things in Nigeria, more than other countries that are around Nigeria. So these are resources. And also, given that our borders are so porous, we were looking at the records we have from our border position. We have about 5 major entry points. And then we have about 22 minor entry points into the country. And when I talk about minor entry points, it's very shameful. You see, you're talking about a drum here, and then bamboo. That's the entry point we are talking about. Drum and bamboo stick. Border control posts. So we have about 5 major ones and 22 minor ones. But do you know we have over 2,000 illegal entry points? Over 2,000. And some disturbing thing about it also is that look at the proximity of the illegal entry points to the minor entry points, and also major entry. From the point of the minor entry point, you'll be seeing an illegal entry point. This was a study of about 18 months of the borders of the country. If you have 2,000 illegal entry points for both human and vehicular traffic, the illegal entry points accommodate both human and vehicular traffic. If you have that, it's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for national insecurity.
So if all of this information has been available for so long, what is the problem? Why can't the authorities do something about it to man these entry points and deter people? Because the free flow of human and vehicular traffic into Nigeria obviously has led to from what you have said, has led to the rise in the number of illegal small arms in the country. Why isn't the government using this information? Why isn't government mustering the resources to stop the inflow of illegal migrants, illegal weapons, and vehicles like that into the country?
I guess you can remember how I started. If you have malaria, you identify you have malaria through diagnosis, you have the resources to sort out your malaria, and you still have malaria, you need to see a psychiatrist. That's how I started.
I remember that.
And I'm telling you that this government of Bola Tinubu have just started. So we have not passed any judgment against them or on them. What I mean we in security circles. But we have passed a very clear judgment on the previous government. They were not listening. They were insensitive. They allowed this country to degenerate into a state that we are today. So Bola Tinubu's government have just started. We're going to give them about 2 more years. 2 more years. We'll be able to make a proper judgment. But look at those I've told you earlier. You see, when you identify those you are working with, when you put in competent hands to work with, it's a major step to solving any problem you have. You saw the level of incompetence we had in the previous government. Extreme incompetence from all angles. But look at the man who have proven himself to be very competent in the little jobs given to him earlier. He's piloting a very major agency, the National Security Advisor, Nuhu. We are believing and thinking that he is putting together a very sizable arrangement. That's what we are believing and thinking. Let's give him a little bit more time. We visited his offices last week to discuss on how best.
But talking about giving him more time, I'd like to know how many more lives will be wasted in that period. That's what I'm thinking. And it makes me want to ask you, what are the low-hanging fruits? How do we stem the tide? While, I mean, what can we do in the immediate to stop the carnage, to stop the kidnappings, or at least reduce them, save Nigerians the agony, thank you, that's the word I was looking for. The agony of having loved ones kidnapped on a daily basis, running from pillar to post, looking for money for ransom. And of course, the fact that you can't even sleep with your eyes, 2 eyes closed, even right here in Abuja.
Well, like I told you, I'm not concerned about Abuja. I live in Abuja, but I'm not concerned about Abuja. Everywhere in Nigeria, I'm concerned about. It's happening everywhere. Why are we concerned? Because it has come to Abuja. Are there not Nigerians living in all those places? Can you effectively go for... I'll tell you that 90% of big men in my own part of the country, Southeast, never went for Christmas because they are targets. We have identified a lot of problems and we have preferred solutions. Like I said earlier, the Nigerian Police Force is the principal security agency in charge of internal security in the country. We gave a very big, dangerous scenario about the leadership of the Nigerian Police Force. We have said that if you check from when 1999 to now, look at the number of inspector generals of police we have. On the average, about 1 year, a year and a half on the average for them to be inspector generals of police. We preferred, and luckily we got the amendment of the Police Act for the inspector general of police to have a tenure of 4 years at the first instance. You can't plan with 1.5 years. That's the truth of the matter. So we also hope that the government will take the lead from what we have gotten from the Police Act to make sure that this Inspector General of Police gets a tenure. 4 years minimum for him to be able to plan the security apparatus and the implementation of it to the country.
All right, one of our reviewers did say, I mean, he brought up the case of the Office of the National Security Advisor banning NSCDC immigration prison service from wearing camouflage uniforms and called it, a no solution at all, because he's wondering, is that the only idea that is coming from the office in a time where, people are being moved off the roads, catered into the bushes time after time. And you say you're hopeful, under his watch that there will be more resolutions to be taken. But that's the first point of call, banning the wearing of camouflage. Is that an inroad to...
That has no bearing to security. I'm surprised it came from the National Security Advisor at this time when people are striving to make sure that we have proper solutions. Banning uniforms. We have more important issues. Anything coming from the National Security Advisor right now should be something that will bring sizable succor to the people, not banning of, and even it's a fellow, it's a sister security agency, they're asking not to wear uniforms. What relevance has that got to do with what we're talking about? We have more serious issues, pressing issues, disturbing issues. Uniforms are very secondary. It's not important for us. We ought not to talk about it. And it's not coming from the office of the National Security Advisor. It's a misnomer. It's an inconsequential discussion. We should be talking about how effectively to sort the problem we have on hand. And we have the solutions. 95 to 98% of the kidnappings are happening inside the bushes. We have cognizance planes. We have drones. We have ways and means to find where this ball out and quench it. The head of the systems should be proactive.
You mentioned about tools, making adequate provision for security infrastructure. And you've talked about it, on and on again. One of the things you did say was you took the medical profession as an example. For instance, no matter how well trained or intelligent a cardiologist is, he still requires a stethoscope to feel the heartbeat. You mentioned that. And one of the things you also said is that the tools that are being used are still referred to the ones used during the First and the Second World Wars. Now, how do you begin to evaluate that now in this kind of fight? And to who does this responsibility fall on his table?
The president. The box stops on his desk. And the president to do that through the heads of the agencies he has appointed. That's why I said if you appoint a bad one, you get a bad result. And the truth remains that, like I mentioned as we started, we have the counter-terrorism squad in the police. What tools do they have to counter the terrorism we're talking about? Where are the tools? The tools are not there. The ones we have are not serviceable. If I give you information on why some of the problems associated with kidnapping is not being solved, you will cry for this country. If I give you information on that. But some of these information are not necessarily important for the public right now. What we keep doing is negotiating with government and the agencies to make sure that these tools are available.
Okay, what kind of tools would you like to give us, at least a sneak preview of what kind of tools we're talking about? Are you talking about screwdrivers?
Maybe screwdrivers. If somebody is kidnapped, for example, the communication is through GSM. No GSM communication cannot be located by law enforcement anywhere in the world. No GSM communication. These people, they are at liberty and talking on the phone and negotiating ransom for days. Don't we have the tools to identify where they are? We have a tool today. It's an Israeli tool. That Israeli tool, even when you put off the GSM, if you put off your phone, as long as there's a battery in that phone, it will still keep emitting signals that would locate where you are. These tools are available. Why are we not using them? You are closer to government, so you ask the question.
Am I? Am I? But really, from what you have said, in closing, Is it a question of political will? Because, frankly, if from everything you've said this morning, the money is available, the personnel is available, what's missing? Why can't we solve this problem?
Look at Nigerians. Look at the performance of Nigerians in various fields of endeavor around the world when they leave this country. They're the best. They're the best. Also in the area of security, they're the best when they leave the shores. The question is, why can't we replicate that feat here in our country?
Right, thank you, sir. I think that's where we'll definitely leave that. I think a rhetorical question for the leadership to be able to answer. I also remember one of the things you said that, you know, insecurity is a byproduct of injustice and, you know, everyone must be treated fairly across board. But beyond that, the conversation, like Kunle just enumerated, the question is there the political will to look at this and nip it in the bud? We've been talking to Sir CHIKWE UDENSI, and he's for a long time been with the Interpol system consultant and a long time the only African agent of Interpol and Interpol National Central Bureau. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for always having me.